New Jersey Geospatial Forum and the IREG group. And the topic came out of a meeting that I heard about through the Geospatial Forum Executive Committee. Mark Gaddy mentioned a MAGTUG meeting, I guess it was about a year ago, and it was kind of a panel discussion on the topics that we're going to talk about today, and also we're gonna do the usual business. But first, I want to let Chris say a few words for IREG.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Trish, for having the IREG members as well as myself today. So Mark had reached out and said that Trish had an interest in sort of hosting a GIS discussion related to enterprise GIS, a topic that went really well about a year ago. So I thought it'd be great to sort of touch base with some of the New Jersey counties, because that discussion was with Brian Ivey from the city of Philadelphia and Chester County, Pennsylvania. So I thought it'd be really good to get an idea and handle and talk to those over on the New Jersey side as to what they were doing and sort of see the state of enterprise GIS, where some of the counties were going, and sort of give an update on some of the information that we were doing. And it was a discussion that I thought worked really well, and something that I think moving forward might be a topic that IREG actually hosts sort of an in-person hybrid event in 2023. So might be bringing some of the members from New Jersey as well as Pennsylvania, and bringing everyone together and have a joint meeting and have further this discussion on this topic. So thanks for bringing us in.
Yeah, so yeah, I do think there's a lot of material. We have today's meeting scheduled to go till 12, so we'll see how we do with that. We won't go over. Are you guys hearing an echo, or are we okay? I'm okay? All right.
I hear the echo as well.
Oh, that's kind of new.
I hear the echo.
I don't know why that is. It just started, huh? I wonder, well, okay, it's gone, right? Okay, all right. So the first thing I need to cover is the usual Geospatial Forum business, and the big business for today is the election results. What I have shown here are the 10 executive committee positions, and the folks in green, those are the returning members, and then the folks in yellow, those were up for re-election this year, and or election this year. And so the county, state, education, private, and municipal positions were all up for re-election. I think I got this right. Let me know if I didn't, but Joe Smalley, I want to thank him for representing the county constituency group. And our newly elected representative to the county group is Matt Duffy, Atlantic County. So I know Matt's on the line. Welcome to you, Matt. And we'll be meeting with the executive committee in January, and we'll sort all those things out. The next executive committee member, Anne Marie Falkowski, she is off the committee, and thanks for serving during I guess the last 2 years at least. And then our newly elected rep is Scott Costello from New Jersey DOT. And then welcome to you, Scott. Oh, actually, I don't think Scott's on the call, but welcome to him anyway. All right, next is Dave Tulloch. He's our education rep at Rutgers, and he served many years, so we thank him for that. And our newly elected education rep is Zachary Chrisman, with Rowan University, I believe. If I'm not right, let me know. So Zach, looking forward to working with you. I don't know why that's happening, but let me see here. Okay. The next up, Tanya. Tanya's returning. Nolte from New Jersey Conservation Foundation. Her term ends in December, as does mine and Mark's and Gary's. So we have a nice group of new folks and some returning folks. And then for the private sector, Kalen Doherty, he has been reelected to that group. And then the municipal position has been vacant for several years, but we are really happy to have a new rep for that group, John Hainsworth from Cherry Hill. So all good news. I think we look forward to making things happen in 2023, including, working again with IREG group if that's how we want to go. I put a couple of committee reports on this agenda, not expecting any reports because I didn't hear from anybody, but I always want to give the opportunity for a committee. The one standing committee we have is elevation, and Roger Barlow, I think he's on. If you have anything you want to, actually, I should have checked with you, but if you don't have anything, that's fine. We'll keep that.
I've got
Okay.
just a brief narrative.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
the 3D elevation program had advertised its broad agency announcement, and New Jersey has been a regular participant, and this time was no exception. Hard work of John Tarosky at DEP and Doug Schleifer at OIT. A proposal was submitted on time, and it is for a recollection of the 2014 Superstorm Sandy. LiDAR collected in 2014 for Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Union, Middlesex, and Monmouth counties. It's a little different because that was a straight up QL2 collection. That means 2 points per square meter and a 10 centimeter vertical root mean square error for non-veg and low veg areas. This one will have the same specs except for the doubling of the points per square meter. So a minimum 4 points per square meter, which will enable some additional use cases for that LiDAR data set. We are hopefully going to hear in the near future about the early acceptance proposals. The fly in the ointment is that we're on a continuing resolution here in the federal government, which ends Friday, and the number of early acceptance proposals will probably be small. At any rate, I'll be sure to inform folks. They'll hear before me, actually. But I'll make sure that the word gets around to Trish and other folks on the NJ GF forum. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Roger. If anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can, I guess, raise your hand, and we can answer you there. Roger, you said 4 points per meter. Is that right? That's
a minimum 4 points per square meter. It's usually more than that because the contractors don't like to have to refly because they might have missed a point. So it's typically closer to 5 or 6 points per square meter, which is a definite upgrade, especially if you're looking to do some buildings or some other types of outlines.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Great. Thank you. The other committee I put on there is the Public Works Utilities Committee, which is our newest task force, I guess. These are task forces, I guess. And I didn't hear from that group, but I just want folks to know that it is there. It's available for you to join. You go to the Geospatial Forum website and you sign up. And that reminds me of another thing. We need to make sure anyone who's calling into this call, if you're calling in on your phone, you need to let us know your name, because we need to keep track of attendance, and that's so that you can be eligible to run for the executive committee in the future. So if you're calling in, let us know, I don't know, in the chat, put your name, or well, just email us, I guess, and let us know that you called into the meeting and who you were, what your number was, I guess. And then the other thing about the forum website, we do keep track of attendance and activity, participation in any of these task forces. And if you change jobs, we need you to update your information on our website, through the forum website. There's a tab that says update your information, so that you make sure we're in touch with you, and also that you join the appropriate task forces or constituency groups. Sorry, yeah, you can join a task force and a constituency group. And sometimes it's a question of which group you should join. If you have any questions about this, ask anyone on the executive committee, and we can address that. Okay, yeah, I see someone put a note there, so thanks for that. Okay, let's see. I think that's all I have for the task force. Just some notes for everyone in the forum about important things to take note of. I got a few notes from the constituency groups. No one had any special announcements. Except for Edith. Edith, for the state. You have I see an update for the geodetic task force. So if you are available to talk now, we're ready for that.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update. The task force work has mostly been suspended for the past couple of years because the work of the National Geodetic Survey to produce the new datums and state plane coordinate systems was behind schedule. Their revised schedule appears to be going well, with anticipated release date of mid-2025 for the modernized National Spatial Reference System, NSRS, data and limited tools. The new state plane system definitions are scheduled for release in early to mid-2023, but they won't be usable until the NSRS data are available. We anticipate that the task force should start active work again in mid-2023. In the meantime, the surveyors have continued to provide education about the topic, and NJSPLS has had informative speakers on the new NSRS and state plane systems at each of their annual ServCon meetings. For anyone needing an in-depth look at those, please see the online announcement available now for ServCon 2023 in February in Atlantic City. One notable event that is not delayed is the deprecation of the U.S. survey foot. This is occurring on schedule on December 31st, 2022, 2.5 weeks from now. The practical effect for those of us in the GIS world in New Jersey is that data in the new state plane system, if in feet, will be in international feet, now also just termed feet, not in the current U.S. survey feet. NGS will continue to support the U.S. survey foot for old systems. It just will not be incorporated into the new ones.
Okay. That's what you got, Edith? Yeah.
That's what I have.
Yep. Thank you. No, yeah, I was wondering about both of those things. So good to hear those updates. Let's see. Now I guess the next thing here is general announcements from. We'll take these from the executive committee or the constituency groups or the general membership. So if anyone has anything you want to announce before we get to the panel discussion, now's the time to do that. Oh, I see Roger put something here. Forgot that some coastal topobathy LiDAR was flown for NIFWIF by US ACE this summer. These sites are largely US FWS and National Park System land. If anyone's interested in such data, please contact me and I'll put you in touch with folks who have the data. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that addition, Roger. Yeah, so that is the Geospatial Forum business for today.
Rich, there's a hand raised. Looks like.
Oh, yeah,
David.
there's a hand. Okay.
Yeah, it's me, David Craker. I just want to say that, hey, I'm at the Census Bureau, and last week the ACS 5-year data for 2021 came out. So if people are looking for that demographic data, it's up on our data.census.gov website.
Okay. Thanks, David. Yeah,
Mhm. Yep.
guess I can't see the raised hands, but thanks for letting me know about that and letting us know. Yeah, ACS, American Community Surveys, good stuff. All right, so I think we're going to move into the panel discussion. So for this, I think the way to, well, first I'm going to just mention the panelists, and then I'll show you the questions that we will be posing to them. We did send the panelists the questions beforehand, and some of you, if you read the meeting announcement, we put some of the questions in there, but there's a few more questions we added to the list, and we might not get to them all, but we'll see how we do. Hopefully this will be kind of a informative, I don't know, stimulating discussion between county GIS folks and those who, even if you don't work for county government, wherever you're working, enterprise GIS may be on your mind. So we're hoping to kind of illuminate some of the issues and present lessons learned from those who've been doing this for a while, and some have been doing it for less than a while. So lots of good stuff ahead, I think. So the panelists, we have Chris Pollard from DVRPC. You met Chris earlier. He's been with DVRPC for a while, and what I'll let the panelists, you guys can start out with, if you want to say anything about yourself or your background, that you're welcome to do that. But I do want to make sure, well, I want to ask you to turn on your cameras when you're speaking. You can keep them on the whole time or whatever. I think that would help. And then the second panelist is Marilee from Burlington County. She's been there for a long time as well. And then Joe Ward and Nick Cressman from Gloucester County. So welcome to all the panelists, and I think we've only got Joe on the call, so that's fine. So we've got 3 panelists, and the way I'm going to do this, I've got the questions in another document here. Yeah, so I'm going to, I think I want to turn off my camera. I'm going to turn off my camera, and then here are the questions we've got. And what I think we'll do, I will kind of go in order with the panelists up top and the questions at the bottom. I mean, I'll address the first question, and what I'll do is I'll highlight it so you can all see that. And I'll address it to Chris first, and then Marilee, and then Joe. And panelists, I guess there's a couple other notes I wanted to make note of here, which I need to do one thing here. Okay. Yeah, as I said, this was a spinoff of a MagTug meeting topic. So enterprise GIS is really what we're talking about today, and hopefully you guys learn a few things, and we all come away with some new information about what works and what doesn't, and how to make things work. So let's see. Oh, yeah. So audience members, I just want to say, if you have questions for the panelists, we like them in the chat. We don't want to kind of get off track. We're going to try to stick with the questions and the panel responses. So if we don't answer the questions through the discussion, Chris or I will respond, after the meeting if we don't get to it. We just kind of want to keep things on track, and then yeah, I think that's everything that I need to say. So we'll get started here. So Chris, there's the first question. Do you have an enterprise GIS? If so, tell us briefly what it looks like and which departments are the heaviest users.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Trish. If someone wants to cue the holiday crackling fire, we consider this to sort of be that that fireside discussion. I think that was something that I took away from the MagTug was the relationship that Marlon and Brian were having, just to sort of talk about their issues and what they were doing. So most of you, or some of you, may have known Will Stevens. He was our GIS manager at DVRPC for decades. And I slotted into his role back in the springtime at DVRPC. So so one of my tasks that I would love to do going into the next year is to have some more of these discussions, talking with our planning partners, having some of these, the GIS community get together and have just open discussions. So whether it's virtual like this or in person, those are some things that to be determined. So just wanted to sort of put that out there. So I know we have Marilee and Joe. I reached out to both of them, but I know that we could have probably reached out to many others, some of you that might be on the call here. So we've got, those folks that are doing GIS at the state and other counties and local governments and our transit agencies. So definitely, like Trish said, if you have an interest in having a discussion, whether it's one-on-one or in a little group, definitely feel free to reach out to Trish or myself. So anyway, so so I've been at DVRPC for 23 years. I'm still doing and entering in metadata, still doing heads-up digitizing, building web mapping applications, and sort of starting to run our GIS systems. So, one of the things that I've been doing is working alongside Sean Lawrence, who's our GIS systems engineer per se. And Sean's been able to sort of take our GIS enterprise, our enterprise GIS, and grow it. Working with our planners, and really at the heart of our GIS, our enterprise GIS, is our Postgres database. So this is something that we've recently moved into within the past few years. So it's comprised, our enterprise GIS is deployed on about 6 different main components, but that Postgres database stores all of our geospatial data. So it has all of the geometry in it, and it is registered and connects to and works with our ArcGIS server and our ArcGIS enterprise portal, so that they sort of are talking to one another. And so we used to be a Oracle shop. So we had all of our data, all of our GIS data sitting in Oracle. And planners were only able to hit it using ArcGIS desktop or web applications. So if we were pushing those and populating those through ArcGIS server. And one of the needs that we saw with our newer planners and staff coming on board was being able to sort of hit it using other GIS software or open source tools such as R or Python, and being really able to sort of take advantage of that spatial component of a lot of the data that we had and we were using. And we had some limitations with Oracle. So not to say that it didn't work, it worked great. But moving into a Postgres database, it allows for more of that interoperability and accessibility, and allows us as a GIS unit to sort of really document and sort of keep an eye on all of that data. So there's some other more powerful tools that we were able to sort of work with, that sort of that database management flexibility. And so we've got our ArcGIS portal. So we have that stored on in-house on a virtual machine. So we've got about 4 virtual machines right now that are all sort of running our ArcGIS enterprise portal, ArcGIS server, and they're, like I'd said, they're all sort of talking to one another and working to make sure that if there's updates to our Postgres database, so on a nightly basis, if there's updates to our traffic count data or any other spatial data, we've got some scripts in the background running to make sure that those latest data sets get published and pushed to our ArcGIS portal, to our server, so that staff have the latest GIS data available to them, whether in desktop applications or in our web mapping applications, or even our GIS, our open data that we're publishing through our open data portal. And one of the other needs we've slowly been sort of migrating to, so not only are we utilizing portal so that planning staff can access the GIS data, but we're pushing a lot of our information to up and making it available to ArcGIS Online. So at DVRPC, we've got transportation and environmental planning staff that might want to do some spatial analysis and use GIS software. But sometimes they just want to sort of create a simple web map. So we've got it set up that each of the different departments can log in and create simple ArcGIS Online web maps. So they can create simple web maps, story maps, or any of the other ArcGIS online tools to be able to share with our planning partners, to be able to use as a tool for public engagement, collecting some input and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure we'll get into talking about some of the issues that we run into with managing them and managing our users and everything. I think that's one of the questions later on down the line. But yeah, that's sort of where we are right now. We've migrated to this in-house, Postgres database and ArcGIS portal.
All right. Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. So you just took about maybe 3 or 4 minutes to talk. So I'm going to say let's set that as the goal, just so we can get. Well, we'll see how we do. I will try to keep track of time here. So, Marilee, how about you? You have anything to say about this first question here?
Sure. First, I want to say thank you for not putting me in the same meeting with City of Philadelphia, because they're on a whole nother level. Every time I see a presentation from them, I'm blown away and feel like we're minuscule. So thank you for that. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm with Burlington County. Trish said I've been here for a long time. I'm not going to name numbers, but I'll just say years. So I've been here since 1995. So I saw the GIS actually when it was first starting out here. So it's been a really interesting process to see it grow and develop. Right now, we do have an enterprise GIS, and we just well, I shouldn't say finished. We just finished the installation and configuration to move to 10.8.1 of ArcGIS Enterprise in March. But the migration isn't finished because we were running 10.3.1, which is a significantly old version. And I do still have some maps that we had our internal people using through our portal running on that. So there's still a process of migrating all of that over. I've run into some problems with things, and so it's taking longer than I would like, but we are doing that. For our geodatabase, we have all of our data stored in SQL Server 2019, and that SQL Server has worked out really well for us in the past. And as far as the use of that, we have multiple different departments who hit that and use it, but we try to mainly put layers into there that are ones that are going to be used by the majority of users. So we tried not to put very project-specific limited data sets into that. But we also use that very heavily for editing. So we do versioned editing, which we absolutely love. It's been just so beneficial for us because we've had projects where we will have 5 people who are working on editing the same data set, and being able to do that and reconcile and post our versions and see each other's changes and everything has just always worked out really well for us. So that's kind of how we work here. I think we have a similar setup to what Chris was saying. We have 4 virtual servers, 1 each for ArcGIS server, portal, SQL server, and then we have our web proxy server also. There were a lot of security concerns that we were having as part of the reason why our migration took a little longer, and our IT people decided they didn't want our web server out in the DMZ, so they moved it behind the firewall and set up a proxy, and that was something that we started the migration in 2020, but that was a piece that we had to finish in March of 2022. So it's been a long haul getting to where we are. We decided to federate, and one of the reasons why we decided to do that was because we wanted our county users to be able to access the maps and apps off the county network. So in our old setup, they could access it as long as they were on a computer that was connected to the county network. But now we're able to, they can log in using their county credentials because we have it set up with ADFS. So they just use their county credentials and they can log in from home, from their phone, from whatever device they want to. And that is a work in progress doing that, but so far they seem to like that. So I was a little afraid there would be some pushback on having to log into it, but I said, you know, this is the benefit you're going to get, and that's the price that you have to pay. So it's been pretty simple. It's worked out pretty well so far. Like I said, we are still migrating our internet and portal maps from our old server, which is something I need to definitely get finalized, especially since this morning before we came into the meeting, we were having problems with that server. So I can hear our IT people saying, "I told you so" right now. Hopefully that's been resolved while I'm in here, and I'll come out and everything will be fine. So that's pretty much what our setup is here. And yeah.
Okay, thanks, Marilee. Yeah, hopefully everything's all working fine when the meeting's over. All right, next up is Joe. Joe from Gloucester. You have any comments or response to this question?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So again, my name's Joe Ward. I'm probably relatively new compared to others in the GIS world. I guess he started back in 2015, really starting to dabble into GIS. My primary background has always been emergency services, emergency response. So I'm used to driving fast, the lights and sirens, and very little analysis on the back end of that. So this was a whole new world to me. I jumped into it. I absolutely love it. And we've done some pretty good things here in Gloucester. We went from older systems, older server types, from data stored on local drives to network drives. And in 2018, perhaps, I think it was, maybe, we deployed an enterprise system to bring all that data together under one umbrella. Essentially, we are currently running 10.9.1, and our system is built out on AWS. The reason why we went to AWS was because we were running into the same network security issues here in the county. The whole DMZ aspect of it just wasn't going to work. I think having an on-prem system behind our firewall, because we need to be able to access that on an emergency management, emergency response world from the outside. So we wanted to be able to, through jetpacks or whatever, be anywhere in the world and tap into our enterprise system, tap into our data, and be able to utilize it. So that rides off of, again, AWS, running 3 instances. One's for portal, one's server, and then the one is SQL. We really don't use the SQL database at all, because we don't really do versioning. Pretty much it's myself and Nick Cressman that are the heavy hitters on it. So we'll collaborate between each other, but we never really jumped into the versioning aspect of it. So we just pretty much rely on the data store and just make sure everything's backed up into S3 buckets through the snapshots of our AWS platform. So that's kind of what our environment works with, and everything integrates together. I mean, we publish data our internal data enterprise, and then our public-facing data mostly resides on AGOL. And we use ArcPro to make connections between those two environments and pretty much modify all the data from there. So it's a snapshot of what we look like.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. I actually have a couple of questions that I was hoping DM, you guys, both you and Marilee mentioned the DMZ, or did I get that right? I'm not familiar with that. Can you just tell me what that is?
So the DMZ is an area, the demilitarized zone. It's an area that's outside of the firewall, but it's still somewhat protected.
Okay.
Not an IT person. I said I work in IT, but I'm not an IT
Right.
person.
Okay.
But that's the way that it's been explained to me.
Okay. Yeah. It's a new term to me, but hopefully others have learned that as well. And then the question I had for Joe, just curious about what Nick's title is there in Gloucester, and your title actually as well.
So my title here in Gloucester is Deputy OEM Coordinator.
Okay.
And Nick he currently has the GIS Specialist 3 title. However, I believe that should be changing soon to a planning title, because he just he passed his national planning test. So congrats.
Okay.
To him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. So those are great responses for our first question. I'm now gonna get the second one here, which Joe, you've kind of just told us about, but let's go back to Chris with this one. Tell us about the GIS users in your organization. How many are there, and what are their skill levels? And if panelists, if this question, you know, if any of the questions I ask, if you're like, oh, I don't have anything to say, that's fine. But feel free to respond if you have something to say. We'll start with Chris.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, I have some questions, and I guess we can do some of this follow back up with Marilee and Joe while they were talking, made some notes. But you know, on that, so just to sort of go back, Marilee touched on sort of the database schema. You know, so one of the things that we've at DVRPC is we've gone sort of taken the approach of categorizing all of our data, so our enterprise data. I think that's been really beneficial because it helps our users. So trying to identify our users, you know, because I think Joe touched on this, was when I started decades ago, it was, you know, working with data on local drives, data not having any like standards or naming conventions. So it was sort of like the Wild West. And the GIS unit really wrapped our heads around a lot of these best practices in the GIS industry. And went with this sort of naming convention of creating these schemas for putting all of our data together. You know, boundaries, transportation, environmental, you know, and really making sure that our data fit into some of those categories as best as possible. Because when it came to our users, we had, you know, we have interns that are working there, but we've got different levels of planners that have GIS capabilities. You know, some of them have had maybe one course. You know, we've got some heavy hitters that are using and writing, you know, hitting our GIS data and really doing some like analysis and building out models. So they're doing a lot of like spatial analysis and sort of building out more recently, building a lot more, you know, network analysis. So seeing where the relationships are with some of our data sets and some of our like transportation projects. And how those data sets relate to equality and different types of you know, census and demographic data that's out there that we as a you know, the MPO need to sort of look at some of these different demographic groups to make sure that we're sort of meeting the needs of those communities. And when we go out to those communities, we want to be able to sort of you know, have the right tools and right information so that we can sort of address their needs in regards to any transportation or regional planning projects that we're working on. But so yeah, internally our users, we might have you know, maybe 20 plus users. Currently right now, I think all of us are sort of in this, you know, being sort of Esri shops, looking at this ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro migration. That's something that a lot of us are going to sort of in the next, I'm not retiring soon. So that's something that's on my list of tasks is how do I get these planners that just sort of know how to use ArcMap and get them migrated over to ArcGIS Pro. So, and then with this whole work from home and working remotely, one of the things I think that Joe touched on was sort of cloud migration, being able to sort of access the data offsite. And so we've noticed with migrating some of our data to sort of this Postgres database, it's allowed us to, that's on site, but it allows us to sort of staff that have QGIS or have other software be able to hit our federated data sets. So they're able to sort of hit portal and they're able to sort of work with that. But how do we set up those standards to make sure that any analysis of data that's being created isn't just dumped on local drives or thrown in, I'm sure some of you have seen this, or thrown into a Google Drive. Because ArcPro or ArcMap trying to connect to a Google Drive and get that shapefile, it's just going to blow up or maybe not work. So we're sort of in the process now of trying to sort of figure out, like, all right, all of our data users, maybe doing a commission-wide staff survey, and then trying to sort of figure out sort of a stepped approach to allowing our staff to continue to work as best as they can to get the data, but then put it in a nice organized fashion, and be able to access and share amongst the rest of staff or our planning partners. So
great, Chris. I think the whole naming convention thing and trying to get everybody to kind of standardize how they work and where they work and the whole working from home. It's all definitely we're dealing with that in my agency, and the move to ArcGIS Pro. I definitely kind of sympathize with you on all those things. Marilee, how about you? Anything to add or anything to say
Sure.
about this topic? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so as far as desktop users, we have 16 desktop users. And out of those 16, 8 of those are either GIS specialists or were GIS specialists who have transitioned into a different title. So they have that level of capability. So we have a GIS section in the IT department that is 6 people, including myself. So that's 6 of those people. So we have 8 who are the GIS level, and 6 of them are in my group. But our group has people who are dedicated to different offices. So we have one person who a lot of you know, Kirsten Gaunt, who she works for our engineering office and supports them. And David Rickert, who some of you also know, he supports emergency services and sits over with them. So, they're the very high level users. But then we have other people who are also in our resource conservation office and at the Bridge Commission who are also GIS specialists or high level users. And one of the questions from the first question that I didn't answer was who are the heaviest users, and I would have to say that it is those same people, So my group are definitely, if you talk about the number of accesses of the geodatabase, the amount of editing that's concerned, and the people who publish maps and things like that, that's again going to be my group, the GIS section, those 6 GIS specialists. Then we have another 6 users who are experienced users, have been using GIS for a number of years, but they use it as part of their job. And then we have another 2 people who have a narrow focus. They have the desktop application and they have very targeted things that they utilize it for. So that's kind of how that's broken up. Then we do use Portal, but we also have ArcGIS Online. And in ArcGIS Online, we have 42 named users right now. 5 of those users are actually licenses from the state that are for the emergency management office. But the rest of the users, some of them are the same people who are using the desktop licenses that they're using for making web maps and things like that. But some are also users who don't need a desktop license, but need to have something. And so we're able to support them through ArcGIS Online. There are also some who just need to be able to access an app that we've created, but it was a secure app, something that we couldn't make available to the public. So we had to give them a login so that they could access that. And what I want to do is I want to take those and I want to bring them into Portal and then have them just access that through Portal so that we can open up some more licenses in ArcGIS Online for the people who want to be able to go in and make maps and publish apps and things like that. So we can kind of, that's a way that we're looking at expanding. We have multiple different departments that access our web maps and apps and who we support. So I mentioned, we have a person dedicated to engineering, a person dedicated to emergency management, and there's a GIS specialist at the Resource Conservation Office and another at the Bridge Commission. But then we support other offices. So we have targeted people who from my staff who support the health department, support the Board of Elections, and anybody else, who comes to us and needs assistance with anything. Prosecutors, the Mosquito Commission has a person who does GIS over there. And the Highway Department, there's a person who does limited GIS there, but we also support them. And one of the things that I think Burlington County has been a little bit different from a lot of counties is that we don't hire consultants for any of our data. So we pretty much do all of our data creating and maintenance in-house. So we did take the roads and address points from the State Office of GIS, but then we have added to those and sharing that information back, but that keeps us pretty busy. Actually kept 5 of us very busy from 2019 until the end of 2021 as nearly our full-time work. So, we do a lot. We do our own parcel editing, and we also do a fair amount of field work, GPS or, field collector on the iPad. So there's a lot of data editing that goes on at Burlington County that I'm not sure goes on in a lot of other offices. So that keeps a lot of these GIS specialists quite busy.
All right. Yeah, one thing I didn't realize how many users or GIS folks you had there, but clearly you've been building that group up for a long time. And there was something else you said. Oh, well, actually, you know what? There's a question in the chat, and I think we can address it here. I don't know if you see it. It's from Dom Elefante. How do you deal with the credits through AGOL, as we really do not publish much on that end, as we rely more on Portal and not worry about not worry about credit consumption? Any response you want to?
Yeah, I
To that?
definitely have a response to that. That is
Okay.
a great question, Dom. So a lot of the things that we publish, we actually publish with ArcGIS Server from our SDE SQL Server geodatabase. We publish it as a service, and then I will add that as an item, or whoever published it will add it as an item in ArcGIS Online, and then make that available for people to add to their maps. And I like to do that because we do so much editing of data, because then if we update our parcels or our roads or our address points or these other layers, our fire hydrants, whatever it is, our stormwater, then those edits, once we post them, are available in ArcGIS Online. So I always did that mainly because I wanted to avoid consuming credits as a bonus to the other benefits to it too. So that's been a thing of mine, is I don't want to consume credits. I don't want to consume credits. When we had the pandemic, we kind of had to start consuming some more credits. So we have some things now that I do have hosted in ArcGIS Online, and we have maps and apps obviously in ArcGIS Online. But lesson learned, I had a situation last year. I did not have limits set on what credits people could consume. And I had a person who geocoded 250,000 addresses and burned up not only burned up our credits, and we had to purchase some additional ones just for that year. So lesson learned. I now have a limit set on everyone. I get a notification if they go over it, and then I talk to them about why they're doing it, because we have our own geocoders. The state has free geocoder. You don't need to use the ArcGIS Online geocoder and use all the credits.
Huh.
So
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for that. I think, yeah, and that was a question that just seemed very relevant. So I did go ahead and ask that. And I want to get back to Joe, and I'm going to let you answer, you know, what are we on? We're on that question, but if you want to go to question 3 as well, which is how is GIS integrated with your enterprise system and applications? And also tell it, well, you did mention your users, but if you have anything else you want to say about that.
So yeah, our users, again, it's myself and Nick that are pretty much the super users of the entire system. We both work with ArcPro as the primary application that we work with. We do have 2 other desktop users that use ArcPro as well. They have specific roles and tasks that they use it for one specific thing, and that's pretty much it. So the other users that we have, you know, like file management, I'm not really good with the users either. So we have about 13. We have 13 creators in AGUL. Is this AGUL? Yeah, AGUL. We have 13 creators. We have 7 editors, and it looks like we have a couple mobile workers. The creators will pretty much, well, I mean, they may update some of the services in ArcGIS Online, just update any of the data that's associated with that. In our portal environment, it looks like we have 11 creators and 7 editors and a couple mobile workers. But this is the interesting environment, because in here we have it set for 2,000 users or viewers. And at that point, we have 109 viewers set. You can set as many viewers as you want. We just arbitrarily pick 2,000. I don't know that we'll ever get to that. If we do, it's probably going to be Nick's problem, because I'll be retired by then. But we have 100 and something viewers, and that's the power behind, I think, the enterprise aspect of it, because we can do the web applications, we can do all the maps we want, but most of our staff that's using this wants to use it for visualization purposes only. So we've done quite a few different web applications where we're using like the screening tool, where they can go in there and grab a snapshot, a small data set of a specific area, and export out that information into just kind of a report if they need it. That's heavily used for like our security camera application. We deployed a while ago. That's a public facing application to get the security cameras, where they're located. So if there's a situation where you needed just a certain area and a list of those cameras, you can snap that out. It brings it out in a report. You can hand it out to whoever you need to hand it out to go out and canvass those cameras. And it saves a lot of time on the back end. So the named viewers is probably one of the really important aspects of this. Let's see, the enterprise systems and applications. Again, we don't use ArcMap anymore. That became a challenge with I think more so with the licensing manager is what became kind of a challenge more than anything else. At one point, it resided local on a machine, and making connections from the secure side to the unsecure side proved to be difficult. So we just totally abandoned ArcMap and went with ArcPro. It was a learning challenge, because I learned on ArcMap, and then the migrate to ArcPro was for me a bit of a challenge. But I know Nick also learned on ArcMap and migrated to ArcPro. And pretty much anyone else, we just say, this is the application you have to use, and you got to deal with it. So
All right.
That's what we look like here.
Yeah, no, that's good. I thank you. And I guess Chris already addressed this question, am I right? Yeah, so
just a little bit, Trish, I wanted to get
Yeah.
real quick. I wanted to ask, I mean, obviously Joe talked about his users, and having, him and Nick as the power users and a handful of these. Marilee, how do you handle, like, with your GIS staff, how do you handle sort of providing services to the county? Like you had mentioned, like one of the things we do at DVRPC is we provide support to our planning staff that doesn't have GIS. Or Joe, I guess you can answer this as well. So how do you maintain all of those requests coming in, like to make sure the projects are due on time and collecting sort of those requirements from staff, that are requesting those services?
We don't have anything formal set up, honestly. We deal with it on a request by request basis. And honestly, to some degree, we've seen a reduction in requests for projects, because a lot of times things that people would think were a project was something that they just really needed a map that they could access. And so we've seen a lot of requests go down once we were able to offer them web maps that they could look at. But usually requests come if they are not specifically for engineering or emergency management. If they're for engineering or emergency management, they'll go right to Kirsten or David to work on them, and then we all talk about things. But other ones will come to me, and then I kind of farm them out to, whoever is going to be working on that. And we just meet regularly and get updates to keep track of where things are. We do a lot of like status maps on projects so that we can keep track of, what's been done, what status we try to do things mostly township by township or county road by county road. And so we will keep track of it that way. We do also do a lot of shared spreadsheets to keep track of what's been done, and everyone can go into the spreadsheet. Like when we were working on the bulk of our address points and our center lines, we were, in order not to step on each other's toes or duplicate efforts or anything, we would sign out specific township that we were working on. And then, someone else could see what townships hadn't been started yet. And then they could start that township, sign it out in the spreadsheet. And then I and everybody else could see that that's where they were. So that's kind of how we do it. Not anything really formal.
Is that Joe there?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're pretty much not formal either. Right now, for us, it's a little unique because it always starts with somebody has a problem, and it's kind of a spatial problem, right? And then becomes the idea of how to solve that problem. And typically what we'll do is we'll spin up web applications specifically to solve that said problem. As it stands now, we have over 20 groups in our enterprise system, and most of those groups are specific to that idea or that problem. So we'll build a web application, and if they need to modify their data, then obviously they'll get a creator level license in that environment and be able to, through that web application and using the smart editor widget, be able to click in there, and they'll be able to modify whatever data they want, or add new points, delete points, whatever it is specific to their project. But the beautiful thing about it is we now just use that data elsewhere. So I'll use like our schools layer as an example. We have all of our schools mapped out. We have their emergency operations plans, field for that, when they were created, when they're due. And that's all consumed into that web application, and the end user just use Smart Editor, click on that. It'll be symbolized based off of when that emergency response plan expires. So that it'll pop up red, they'll click on it, they realize that it's expired, and they got to, touch base with the stakeholders to get an updated version. So we have a lot of web applications. That's pretty much how we tackle that.
That's good to know. Yeah, because at DVRPC, we, the planners rely on us for a lot of help, cartographic help, GIS data, just making sure that gets pushed up to our enterprise data if there's new data sets or new parcel information, new transit data. We have a whole GIS ticketing system. It sends emails when planners ask for assistance, and we're able to sort of tag staff, upload documentation. We even have the ability to put in sort of some flags for due dates, because sometimes there's like so much work, and it's a lot of sometimes there's overlap, and trying to sort of collaborate and coordinate that way. It's a lot of times it's a final end product, but we have seen, Joe, such as like you'd mentioned, spinning up a web app or some sort of something to allow staff to just sort of visually look at some of that data, and sometimes that meets their needs. So we've seen our ArcGIS Online web apps growing. Definitely, it helps sort of solve that, but. But yeah, so I think going back, I think we talked about that enterprise GIS and those applications being integrated in and with the user. So, keeping track of all of those. I know, Joe, do you guys have a way, or how are you maintaining your ArcGIS Online? Like if that stuff is growing, if a link is dead or broken in there, I think that's one of the problems that we're running into is what type of tools are out there, where I think there's some pretty strong Python tools, and there's some other tools that I think Sean's been exploring to be able to sort of hit that the ArcGIS Online, look at all the web maps and the different services and the hosted data, and be able to sort of track and maintain sort of that information. So I know that if you guys are in that realm, I know Sean's been exploring that and building some really good, powerful tools. I think Sean, are you on? Did you join us? I think he said he was going to join us.
Yeah, I thought I saw. Oh yeah. Oh, it says he's invited, but I don't.
Yeah, there he is. So Sean, can you just elaborate a little bit more? Because I think it's something that lately, like what I asked you to do for me, it's like, hey, can you hit me and tell me all of the web maps, all of the feature services and data? Is that like, what is the basis of that sort of scripting or tool that you were building and working with?
Yeah, no, I'm looking. I don't see him on the list. So if he's not there,
he is, but it's a little bit.
Oh. Well, yeah, I don't hear him, so I'm not sure.
But just for Marilee and Joe, for anyone else, I think there's this, there are some really powerful tools to be able to sort of do some more management, database management and user management with ArcGIS Online. So maybe that's a discussion that we have in early 2023, is talking about those tools, or maybe being able to help share some of the stuff that we have or others might have. So.
Yeah, that sounds good, Chris. So while I think Joe was talking, a question came in on the chat that I would like to pose to the panelists, and hopefully you don't need a lot of time to think about this one, but the question is, what steps would you recommend in setting up an enterprise environment from an infrastructure of separate licenses and data sets? And that's from Benjamin Brower. I'm not sure if Benjamin, if you wanted to clarify, or if panelists, anyone wants to take that question on. Any thoughts from anyone?
I can clarify if need
Okay.
be.
Yeah, please do.
I think I'm just asking more from an Ocean County perspective. We are looking into possibly going to an ArcGIS Enterprise licensing. Right now we have 5 separate licenses. So that is like 5 different users, 5 different data sets. Any recommendations in building out that enterprise environment of having those 5 groups eventually become one?
Gotcha. Any of our panelists have thoughts on that one, or maybe something to think about?
Yeah, a couple. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. So, I mean, it sounds like you've already started doing an inventory, and that's the primary thing that you need to do, is do an inventory. And it sounds like when you're talking about the separate licenses, you know, there's separate licenses of desktop, I guess, on different machines, which isn't necessarily a problem. I think the idea behind the enterprise is getting that all the data together so that you can put it into one database, but you need to kind of do that inventory and find out what data they have and what of that data should be in your enterprise and what maybe shouldn't be, and then organize it. Now, our licensing, we do have a license manager that we use. So we do have individual licenses of standalone Software Pro or ArcMap that we run on laptops and things like that, or have for our emergency management. But we do have a license manager, and Esri should be able to help you out with that. They probably, if you wanted to move those licenses from being 5 individual licenses on, you know, separate machines and move that to a license manager where it would be more like floating licenses so people would check them out as they needed them. Esri should be able to work with you to get them all onto one license manager, but there might be some pricing changes involved. There might be some cost to converting them.
Yeah, I think for us, the licensing manager, if I recall correctly, I believe we had the option to either put our ArcPro licensing manager on the enterprise or keep it on ArcGIS Online. We opted to just keep it on ArcGIS Online. One last thing, I suppose we had to manage. I don't recall what the specific details were with it, but we kept it on ArcGIS Online because it really didn't matter. Once it was on ArcGIS Online, if we connected to ArcGIS Online, then we could pull data from ArcGIS Online, or if you needed to switch that environment, you just simply choose the other environment that you're connected to, add that connection, and now you're connected to Portal. So I will routinely pull data from our enterprise environment if I need to put it on AGOL, pull it from enterprise and just publish it to ArcGIS Online, or just through an established collaboration, have it in one environment. That way I'm just touching that one data set, that one feature layer, and then the next day it'll wake up and right to the one that's on ArcGIS Online. So there's a lot of options, I think, in that avenue.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great. So Chris, is Sean out there? Does he have anything he wants to respond to there?
Trish, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know, I was muted or something before. But yeah, I mean, DVRPC, we have our license server internal. We did we at first had it with ArcGIS Online, but we moved it to our internal server. It's a little bit easier for us to manage that way. But yeah, I mean, at DVRPC, we only have like really one group for the enterprise. So we don't have like other departments like managing their own data. The GIS department sort of manages the data and our database for the whole commission. So.
Okay. I don't know, Chris, if there was a specific question you had for Sean. If otherwise we'll move on to, we're about halfway through the question. We'll see how we do with timing, but I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I think we will move on here. And I actually want to get to, I'm going to skip this question. These 5 and 6, if we forget to, because I do want to get to this one. How does your organization view the use of GIS? Do you think other departments see the value of it and support it? Were there areas within the organization that took more convincing than others? And actually kind of related to what I want to add to this. Do you find that you have more demands than you can meet, you know, with your staff? And I know Marilee was talking about how they handle requests, but it sounds like you're handling them pretty well, Marilee. But I assume there are some, or are there requests that you're not able to meet, that you just can't get to? Anything from? Is Marilee?
Go first, or?
Yeah, if you would. Yep. if you don't mind.
For all of that. So how our organization views the GIS, I feel like our organization views it as being pretty vital. We have support from our county administrator. I will get requests for projects from her. Sometimes they're simple, sometimes they're pretty complicated. But she actually came out of our health department. Our health department was one of the first users of GIS in the county. And so she definitely knows the benefit, and that has trickled down to her administrative staff. So we support that office with map requests and projects and web maps and apps. So that's pretty great for us. And then other departments, the departments who utilize the GIS, I think they find it to be pretty vital to them too. A few years ago, we had always done maps for our Board of Elections and for polling place locations and things like that, and some little bit of analysis for them. But a few years ago, we launched a web map where they could use that for an audit that they were doing. So all of a sudden, our Board of Elections and Superintendent of Elections, if that map goes down, I get a phone call or an email right away. So, they've definitely seen that it goes beyond a printed map. And, now we've evolved that to having apps online for finding your polling place and ballot boxes and things like that. Other departments that seem to definitely find about a value to it. Public safety, emergency management always has. And around 2012, we started supporting public safety with center lines. But in 2018, they signed a contract to migrate to a newer version of the software that they were using that spun everything around and relied a lot more heavily on the GIS. And all of a sudden, they wanted data and they wanted really complete data, and it wasn't there. So we had to step up and make it so. And we were just in a meeting with them last week, and they were saying, we're finding very few things that need to be added or need to be changed, or we're getting a lot of compliments on how everything's working. So now, they find the benefit of it too. So we've had a couple of situations where I guess departments weren't necessarily embracing it right away. So early on here, we did work a lot with our engineering office, but they had some data that we were building data sets, and we got data from them, and we were trying to work with them more. And they were a little reluctant to really embrace GIS. There were some people there who were very interested in it and wanted to get involved with using it. But there were others who were kind of like, well, that's GIS and we're engineers. And, they had the way that they had worked for a long time with their data and wanted to continue working that way. And so that was took a little while to massage that and get that working relationship going there. And one of the things that really made that take off was having Kirsten in the engineering office. And that's where she lives, and so she's there day to day, able to do things for them, help them out with stuff. And so they began to grow to understand and trust. That was the real thing, to trust the GIS data that she was creating. So now, we have web maps and apps that they utilize, and we have like 24 users in our portal right now, just mostly because I brought over one of the apps that we had on our old portal to the new one, and for engineering, and they are just going to town on it. And even with that took some pressure off of her having to do, daily requests for basic things. But still, she comes in the morning and there will be, people who are like, I need this, I want that, can we do this? So it's really turned around and they've become really excited. The other place where we had a little reluctance for whatever reason was at the start of COVID. A lot of counties, a lot of places were spinning up the COVID dashboards or COVID hubs, and we had made the offer and really were told that they didn't think that was needed. And then they finally came to us and said, is this something that you could do? So we did it for them. And I have to say that our COVID dashboard is just now coming down because the data is just not there to really report anymore accurately because of so much home testing and everything. But getting that out there, they ended up coming to us and asking us to do a dashboard to show the results of lake testing for bathing areas over the summer. And now they've come back to me and said, you know what, we don't really think we need the COVID dashboard anymore, but here's some ideas that we'd like to explore on setting up another dashboard that would just be about communicable disease in general. So I feel like those were 2 wins on our side. But overall, I feel like we get a lot of good support and interest. Do we have more than we could do? When we were focused entirely on the public safety data, it was kind of like we only did requests that were like emergency things. You know, we couldn't take on big projects. We couldn't do things that could wait. So there were things that had to wait. Some of those things we're just getting back to now, like our parcels, we just got back to starting editing on those back in 2021. So there's always more that we can do. And I've had conversations with our director before about, I would like to do kind of like a GIS showcase or something for GIS Day, just so that offices could see, you know, how other offices are using GIS. But it's kind of a, you know, are you going to be able to handle all the requests that are going to come out of that? And at the moment, the answer is no. So we're not going out and looking for more things to do. We're trying to keep going with what we have and keep things moving along.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's I'm not surprised at that answer, but I also think it's interesting how you did some work for you know, one of the agencies, departments, and there were spin-offs from that they could see the benefit. And yeah, good stuff. There's actually 2 comments in the chat, and I do want to I want to address the second one first from Vince. It says, and this is I guess for any of the panelists who want to weigh in about the benefits of federating, and maybe someone could just kind of briefly describe what it means to have a federated GIS. Maybe Marilee, is that something you can talk about? And then we'll let Joe and Chris weigh in.
I'm probably going to butcher the attempt of explaining federating, but with the enterprise setup, there's multiple different components to it. You know, we have our SQL server, we have ArcGIS servers, separate software, we have portals, separate software, and the federating allows them to all communicate with each other and share security, and all of the security goes through portal. So I don't know if that explains that. That was kind of not the way that was set up on the old system. That we just looked at portal as being like ArcGIS online running internally on our network. So if we would publish something, we would share it with everyone, and then any county user could just access any web link, access the link and get to it without having to log in or anything. But by going into doing the federating, it creates this shared security, and it allows you to be able to expose things externally, and therefore, you know, requires that you have these logins. We were not in that situation when we had to work from home, when we had to work remotely because of COVID. So it's an interesting question about, you know, how that would have benefited. I think that would have benefited the engineering people who were and the health department people who were accessing those apps internally. But the thing that did end up saving all of that was that the county set up a VPN. So when we were working from home, we would VPN into our desktops in the office, and we're able to work like we were, you know, sitting at our desktop, except not with the same large monitors that we were used to. So that's how we worked that out.
Just the last bit of Vince's question is, I'm curious if you would say the enterprise setup has helped with remote work, and how many users currently would use this functionality. Do any county staff still work remotely?
None of the staff that I have, none of the staff that I know are working remotely anymore. Yeah. Okay.
Chris and Joe, any comments you want to add about the federated GIS? Or okay.
I think Marilee hit the nail right on the head as far as the federation goes. Will it help working remotely? I mean, I would say absolutely. We don't have anybody working remotely, but there are times, it was about a year or two ago, when we had the tornado come through Gloucester County. Our emergency operations center was operational, but I could tell you, I spent a lot of time out in the field with a laptop and had access to all my data as long as I had access to an internet connection. The only limitations that you face in that aspect are whatever limitations, hardware limitations that you would have on your laptop. So if you're running some pretty big data processes or large imagery files, you're gonna be challenged in the field or remotely to do so. But that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Chris, anything you want to chime in there? I see there is a little discussion from Sean about the Python search and the AGOL search that he does, which I am interested to hear more about, if not in this meeting, at a future one. So maybe we can talk about that later, but I'm ready to go on to the next question or another question unless you want to say something here, Chris, I'll let you.
I mean, we do have our ArcGIS server federated at DVRPC, which just, yeah, basically means, like everybody said, it's like managed, the permissions and stuff are managed with Portal versus like actually just managing everything on the this ArcGIS server. And during, like at the start of the pandemic, our portal was sort of set up as like an internal only, or before the pandemic, sorry. Our portal was set up for an internal only sort of use case. But now, once the pandemic started, we decided to push the portal to, external users. So our staff could use their Windows domain to log in to portal. But I mean, we already had sort of Citrix, like remote desktop software, implemented at DVRPC before the pandemic, and most of the staff, logging in the Citrix, they could access the enterprise database and their desktop computer. So, staff really didn't use Portal because we already had that remote desktop software. So,
Interesting. Yeah, Vince, I hope that helped answer your question. I think that was a good one. I think oh yeah, it says, Sean, thanks. Would love to hear more as well. Organizing AGOL items and determining which are still in use is an issue. Yep, we got that issue too. And that's from, I guess, New Jersey Transit. So let's see. Oh, future. Yeah, that's that's what was in the chat there. Future. Yeah. So I do want to definitely ask this next question of our panelists, and let's see. Where's the question here? What does growth look like? The growth of GIS look like in your organization, hiring, expansion? Should we go to you, Chris, or Sean, or?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as far as the hiring goes, I mean, at least in the GIS department, we're a pretty lean group, and we haven't had to do much hiring because, I mean, I've been at DVRPC for 18 years, and literally like the first 5 years of that 18, before 2010 was, the GIS department did all the GIS work at DVRPC. But over time, as younger planners came in at DVRPC, they all had sort of GIS experience from school. So we've had the unique opportunity in the GIS department to see a lot of our work that we did before these skilled planners came in, kind of move over to them, and they were doing a lot of the simple map making or simple analysis, where some of the more complex geospatial analysis resided in our department. So you know, we haven't had to hire a lot of new staff in the GIS group. But what we have done is, you know, move to sort of expand our enterprise to open source technologies with like Postgres and PostGIS, and you know, a lot of planners are now using tools like R and Python to do data analysis as well in QGIS. So you know, our department has been sort of, you know, we have to accommodate, you know, the planners that are coming in with some of these newer technologies and experiences. So it's been interesting, but it's definitely fun.
Yeah, and I'll just expand on what Sean said there. Is Sean has really taken some of his Python and SQL skills and sort of created tools that can sort of be like utilized, you know, with other projects. So if the planning staff is looking at a corridor study, you know, and then they're switching and they're maybe working corridor study in Chester County, and then next year we have one in Camden County, but it's the exact same analysis, but it's just feeding in different data sets and different layers. You know, we're starting to sort of, you know, really document, you know, a lot of that, more of the spatial analysis, and sort of using some of those open source tools to document and manage the work that's being done so that it can be repeatable and sort of like copycat at other places for other work. Because that's sort of the how DVRPC works, is we sort of get sort of consulted by the counties to work on certain projects regarding safety or crashes or environmental work, but it just shifts locations. So you know, having some of these tools that we can create and sort of continue to build has really been sort of where we're moving towards in the future. And collaborating a little bit closer with our planning staff as well, to get a better idea for sort of that end product. So.
Yeah, thanks. I think the comment about newer, younger employees coming in with quite a bit of, often very much a lot of GIS experience, and being able to take on some of those tasks that we used to do. Definitely, I see that where I work. I do. So it's almost 11:30 here, and I'm not sure we want to go another half hour, but I want to get, I guess, one last question, and if anything else comes up in the chat, we might be able to address that. But I do think there's some good questions for follow up for future, you know, meetings, you know, that we can expand on in the chat. But the last question I actually want to ask is, this last question here, what has been your most challenging GIS task? And I guess I'll start with Joe. We haven't heard from you, so let's start with you here.
Yeah, well, there's been a few challenging tasks for sure. I think one of our most challenging tasks that we were presented with was during COVID. We had an actual mega site down in one of the mega sites down here in Gloucester County. And I guess before, about a week before we opened the mega site, we were approached and said, hey, we need you guys to develop a backup system to, in case the state system fails. Well, on the first day of operation, the state system actually went down, but myself and Nick sat down and we built an entire web application, survey driven, that basically was the backup system. And we ended up utilizing that backup system and for about 7,000 vaccinations before it finally came back online. So it was kind of a saving grace, but kind of an off-label use of GIS, right? We weren't really mapping anything. We were just utilizing the tools that were available to us and using them to our advantage. We did have surge licensing, so we were able to spin up a bunch of surge licensing for the registration in the vaccination room. But we utilized that for the first couple of weeks of that operation, and we were fortunate enough to get 7,000 people through the door, which would have otherwise been a very arduous and manual process without doing it electronically. I think the other challenging task, and credit goes to Nick across the way there, this past summer, he spun up the mosquito control application, is what we refer to it as. And what we calculated was, for that one, a return on investment. It almost dovetails into question number 7, I believe. But we saved about, I want to say 360 something man hours spent dealing with mosquito control. They would call in, somebody would take the request, write down the phone number. So he automated the entire process. So there was the survey 1, 2, 3, public facing. Somebody needs mosquito spraying, they would fill out the survey, it would come in. Once those points were assigned to the individual going out to spray, it would, through webhooks, send an automated message. Once that field was changed, it would send an automated message through SMS to that resident saying, we're coming out to spray today, make sure your windows are closed, and gives all those specific and required instructions. And then once they spray it, they say they sprayed it, the point disappears off the map. So I think historically we were doing somewhere around 5,000–6,000 a year. This year they were able to accomplish over 12,000 service requests. And it really, really streamlined the process. It was an extremely challenging task, especially for the notification aspect of it. But credit goes to Nick. I wish he was here to speak on it. He did a phenomenal job on that application. So 2 of the most recent ones anyhow.
All right, thanks. Chris or Marilee, you want to respond to your most challenging GIS task?
Go ahead, Marilee. And we're a quick question. I think one question was like hiring. Like, are you guys Joe? Are you guys expanding at all? Like, are you and Nick saying, you're a 2-man team? Is this one of the things where, because you have so many requests? I mean, I just want to give kudos to anyone who's working at the county, for within GIS at least, because the amount of operations and how much you guys are relied on is just having talked to some of the other county, the PA counties and folks, it's like, even Matt Lawson, it's like the amount of work and tasks that you guys are all asked to do is just phenomenal. So kudos to all of you for continuing and working with this technology and doing all the hard work you guys do. But yeah, Joe, what does expansion and hiring look like for you?
So, I mean, we have those conversations, right? I don't know that we really have a whole lot of time to get into depth on the conversations. So it really hasn't gained much traction. I mean, we'd absolutely love to expand. Would love to hire another GIS professional or a GIS specialist, maybe even 1 or 2. But how we've tackled the expansion is, it seems as though we currently have, I guess, about 9 departments that utilize GIS, and then several municipalities. Typically what happens is we find that one individual in that department that falls in love with GIS, right? And there was one question in there, how do we educate them? And we'll spin up that web application. We'll give them something very, very basic and go through, that workflow with them, very basic workflow. And then typically what happens is they'll come back and say, well, how do I? And then we answer that question, and then it provokes another question. And next thing you know, they're getting a desktop application or a desktop license, and now they're branching into desktop. So we just kind of been working internally to educate our staff, our staff from different departments on the powers that they have available to them every day. So that seems to have been really an effective approach, and kind of doing more with less.
Yeah, sounds about right. Really interesting, and I agree with what Chris said about how there's so much going on at the counties, and definitely the GIS folks there, how much there is to do, and I guess Marilee, did you want to talk about what's been your most challenging task, or any of these other questions that I kind of skipped? If you want to talk about hiring, expansion, or anything, it's up for You're
Sure.
up.
I would have to say probably our most challenging GIS task was our support of public safety's 911 data. The data that we had in 2012 we had a commercial data set through licensing with the state, which that licensing went away, and we took the data set that the state had and our 911 tested it. They weren't happy with it. So we dedicated time to going through all the centerline data and cleaning up a lot of things, adding a lot of address ranges to it, and got it cleaned up to where they were pretty happy. So we thought we were doing pretty good and were not too concerned when we knew that they were going to go into this new version of the CAD software that would spin everything around and rely more on the GIS, but we knew we needed address points and the state had address points. So we had starting places, and we actually, for at least a year or 2 years prior to the switchover, we had been asking for them to tell us what they needed, what layers they needed, so that we could start making sure we builded things, what parameters they needed to test things and things like that. And we kept being told, you have to wait until the contract is signed. Well, once the contract was signed, the company kind of reviewed our data and kind of gave it a clean bill of health. But then when we went in to actually put the data in and start utilizing it, it wasn't up to the standards that they needed. The information was not as detailed as they needed. And our public safety had their own way that they liked to do things, and they wanted the data changed in order to accommodate those. One of the things that fell into that situation was, instead of putting in an address and saying that that address was in Hainesport, they use a number. So they would say that that address was in venue 36. So that was something that wasn't in the data, and we had to add that. Some other things, the way that they abbreviate road names and the way that they name roads and things. So we had to make a lot of changes to the data, and there were times where we changed the data and then they're like, well, no, we don't want it that way. We want it this other way. And so we would have to go back through and change it again. So it was a lot of patience. And in the meantime, we also were very well aware that New Jersey Office of GIS was working on their own standards for Next Gen 911, and that eventually this data would be used for Next Gen 911. And we wanted to build it now so that we were compatible with all of that. But our 911 really had absolutely no interest outside of the county's immediate needs. So that was a very big challenge, trying to work on the data and use our time wisely so that in the end, when Next Gen 911 comes along, we're not going to be in the same boat. So we're still working on that, but it was a big challenge because it was a lot of information that we needed to clean up, that we needed to add a lot to. And like I said, it took, 5 people off of my staff, myself included, became our primary job for several years. And that is the one thing I don't think that office understands, what that would have cost them to hire a consultant to do. So that was a big challenge. A lot of listening to what their needs were and trying to accommodate their needs, at the same time keeping our ear on what was going on with the state and trying to figure out how we're going to make everybody happy in the end. And we're still working on data. There's a lot of the address points from the state were based off of parcels, and there's a lot of addresses that are sub-addresses that are, like a strip mall may have one address, but then each unit or each business in there has a sub-address to that, or you have apartment buildings, you have all these other things that they want all that detailed addressing for, that you can't get from generating it from parcels. So it's still a work in progress, and we just finished doing a sweep of all 40 municipalities in the county to go out and look for specifically addresses that were missing, and primarily looking at houses that are actually apartments. So they have actually, maybe there's 3 apartments in that building. We had 1 address for it, and there was nothing that we could find to tell us that there were more addresses or what they were. And there's only so much you could see from Street View and Google. And so we actually did field work and went out and completed all 40 of those municipalities. I don't know how many we added over the whole course of that, but since April, I just happened to do a check recently, and since April, we added 10,000 address points. So I would say working on that project and coordinating everything together. And we were working on this remotely during COVID. This was our primary thing during COVID. So a really big factor in getting that all done was communication amongst the team, which I have to say they are very good at. So that really helped move things forward and keep things going.
Wow. Wow. Great. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Marilee. Good stuff. I think the way I'm gonna kind of wrap this up is let Chris, if you have any kind of final, actually any of the panelists have any final words you want to say, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, this has been great. I mean, we could probably sit here for hours, you know, and keep going on. But I just wanted to say thanks to Marilee and Joe for joining the conversation, and it's great to sort of hear your tales and woes and success stories and headaches, knowing they're sort of very similar that we're all experiencing, and then but very different as well. So two different aspects and approaches to how you go about doing them. And thanks for Sean for joining us. I know that we can continue to have some of these conversations in the future. So those of you that have joined, thank you for sticking around and listening to the 4 or 5 of us chat about this stuff. Like I'd said in the beginning, if you've got other questions or want some follow up, I think we're all pretty much available for some further discussion. To continue the conversation on these topics or others. So. Yes, thank you.
I want to thank the audience and the panelists, and I appreciate the things that are in the chat. Thanks, Sean, for putting that. That's nice documentation there. So there's definitely lessons learned here, and hopefully all of you will go away, have learned a thing or two. And yeah, so I'm going to wrap it up. So this is the last Geospatial Forum meeting of the year, and our next meeting will be in March of 2023. Look out for the announcement about that. It'll come out through email. And then happy holidays to everyone. And we'll see you in 2023. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trish. See ya.
Yep. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Trish. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Happy holidays.